they haven't in a while, but they used to do it every single semester, is a muscle called your platysma muscle. If they're gonna ask this muscle, they're gonna have to ask it on a picture. They'll have to give you a picture like the one here. The platysma muscle lays right here. It kind of has little fingers up into the jaw, and then the rest of the muscle kind of comes down, and it actually goes all the way down to your collarbone, and it drapes onto the front of your chest. This is a very useless muscle, which is why I'm not quite sure why they make us teach this one to you. I call this the "oh crap, your baby is ugly" muscle. If your best friend came to you with an ugly baby and said, "Oh, look at my baby," and you realized it was really ugly, what face would you make? It's an ugly ass baby. This muscle tenses the skin of your neck. That's what it does. It tenses the skin of your neck, like this. It does help you to slightly open up your jaw, and it does play a little bit of a protective role in that it does cover over top of your carotid artery and your jugular vein, because you have one on both sides. But its main function is to tense the skin of your neck. It's the "oh, your baby's ugly" face muscle. And again, it's not on a model. The only way they can ask the question is if they choose a picture, which again, they used to do all the time. They haven't in a couple semesters. So maybe they've given up on it, or maybe we're due. I don't know what that means. Now, when you look at the lab, after this is the picture that comes in the book. Afterwards, I throw another picture up here. This is Netter's anatomy. This picture doesn't look so good from the screen, but when you look at it on your computer, it's a lot better. In my opinion, the best anatomy book on the market, bar none, all day long, twice on Tuesdays, is Netter's Anatomy, which is where this picture comes from. It's just the same look. It's just a different source. I've obviously boxed all the muscles you're responsible for. It gives us a little better view of the platysma. See how it comes down and it drapes over top of the collarbone into the chest. You can see it draping over the top of the mandible. But this muscle's main job is to tense up the skin in the neck. Again, this is just another look. I'll always teach from these pictures because they show up better on the screen. I put this picture up there only because about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they used this picture on the lab exam. And it screwed up 3/4 of my students. It's a good picture. It shows the temporalis muscle, it shows the masseter muscle, but most people didn't much care for it. So since then, I've added the picture just in case they choose to put it out there again. Just another look at those same two muscles. And then after that, in every section, after every section of muscles, I provide you with these boxes. And these are ultimately from the book as well. And what I've done is I've put into a box the muscles you're responsible for: orbicularis oculi, orbicularis oris, temporalis, and masseter, as well as the platysma. And if you look at each of these charts, and you come all the way to the side, it'll show you its action. So it gives you the action, tenses the skin of the neck for the platysma. Closes jaw, prime mover to close the jaw like you want to bite. Orbicularis closes the lips, purses the lips as if kissing or whistling. Orbicularis oculi closes the eyes. It tells us what the muscle does. So you have all your actions there as well. Any questions on these 5 muscles before we move on to the next set? The best way to study these is really, really simple. You need to make a picture. I would use this picture. I would obviously find a way of getting rid of all the words, have leaders, and then have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then on the back of an index card, have the answers to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then have another set of index cards which has the muscle on the opposite side, what's its action. If you know those 2 things, you'll do very well in the muscle section of this test. If you don't, you will do poorly. It's just that simple. If you can't name the muscle and if you can't tell me its action, you will do poorly. brings us to our next muscle. This muscle is called the sternocleidomastoid muscle. Can I borrow half that again, please? This is a muscle that you are allowed to abbreviate. You can call this muscle the SCM. The great part about this muscle is the name of the muscle tells you exactly where the darn muscle is. Sternocleidomastoid. The muscle tells you where the muscle exists. It exists between the mastoid process, the sternum, and the clavicle on the front of our torso. This muscle runs. S is in Scott, C is in cow, M is in man. SCM. So it runs from our mastoid process. Fibers come down to the manubrium of the sternum, and fibers come down to our clavicle, giving us this one beautiful muscle. Obviously, this picture is only showing it on one side. We have it on both sides of the neck. This muscle on your model, on half head guy, is number 43 and number 52. So this muscle right here is your sternocleidomastoid muscle. And this muscle has two functions. Function number one occurs when both the left and the right muscles contract at the same time. If I contract both muscles at the same time, I'll flex my neck. I'll bring my chin to my chest. On the same token, if I only contract one side, if I only contract the right one, I'll rotate my head. So if one of the two muscles contracts, you rotate the head. If both muscles contract, you'll flex your neck. This is the muscle that most gets aggravated when you get a whiplash injury. Anybody here ever had whiplash? Where you get into an accident, your head juts forward real quick, but then it slams back. As you slam back, this muscle tears. And then for a while, you can't rotate your neck really well. Well, it's because this muscle rotates our neck. So if it's torn and inflamed, rotating your neck stinks. Again, here's another same look at the same muscle. From the mastoid down to the sternum and clavicle, we can see the same muscle on the opposite side, but it's under the fascia that covers on top of it. And again, here's the sternocleidomastoid showing that it flexes and laterally rotates the head, depending on if both muscles are contracting or if only one muscle is contracting. Are we kosher with that one? Good. Which brings us to our chest. When you take a look at the front of our torso, now there's a couple different models that are good for this one. The first model that's really good for this one is the front plate of Pygmy Guy. And unfortunately, we only have two of them. All right, so we got one Pygmy Guy here, we got one in the back here. They oftentimes will just use this plate. They won't give you the whole model. All right, they'll just take this plate off, and then when you get to the test question, it'll be sitting on the table like so, with stickers on it and questions underneath it, just like you saw in the first one. So get used to the front of torso guy. This is where they're going to ask all their ab questions. Pec major, pec minor will both be asked using the front of Pygmy Guy's body. And again, they rarely ever use the whole Pygmy Guy model. So, the muscle that we all know and love, everyone's heard of their pectoralis major muscle, pec major, which is that big chest muscle just under the skin on top of our chest. In this model, it is number 28, 29, and 30. So it's this big muscle at the end of my three fingers. Right? So this muscle is your pec major. The reason why it has three numbers, 28, 29, and 30, is simple. Some of pec major's muscle fibers attach to the clavicle, like we see here. Some of the fibers attached to the sternum, like we see here, and some of the fibers attached to the ribs, like we see here. So there's three different muscle fibers attaching to three different structures, so that's why you get three different numbers, because you have an upper pec, a middle pec, and a lower pec. Now for your purposes, it's all pec. Pec major, and you can call this muscle the pec major. P-E-C, and then the word major. Perfectly acceptable. If they ask this muscle, my answer sheet's gonna say pec major. I'll assume you meant pectoralis. How do you exercise pectoralis major? How do you exercise this in the gym to understand what its action is? Bench press. So bench press or push-ups are the two best examples of how we strengthen our pec major. So when I do a bench press, where I start here and I end here, what motion have I created using my pec major? Or if I'm doing a push-up where I start here and I push my body up like so, what motion have I created? Extension would be this. We call this would be adduction. So we adduct, A-D-D, duct the shoulder. This is a shoulder adductor primarily. Because remember, flexion and extension has to happen in the sagittal plane. We're working not in sagittal plane anymore. So it's, don't get me wrong, flexion extension is the best wrong answer, but that always happens in the sagittal plane. Pec major works in the horizontal plane. So pec major, shoulder adductor. It also helps to rotate the shoulder and things like that, but at the end of the day, shoulder adduction is the best one. Underneath it, if you were to take pec major and tear it off your body, underneath it is a smaller muscle. This is your pec minor. It's number 27 on Pygmy Guy. Pec minor has nothing to do with shoulder motion. So again, if we take pec major away, underneath it is a shorter muscle that runs from the coracoid process of the scapula down to the ribs on the front of our thoracic cage. This muscle does two things for us. One, it helps us to make subtle motions of our scapula. Nothing specific, just subtle motions of the shoulder blade or scapula. The second thing this muscle helps us to do is gasp for air. Everybody here, everybody here swim, right? You don't swim? Well, you won't maybe get this one. For those of us who swim, you've gone off a diving board, you go as deep into the pool as you can go, and then you start to rise up, and as you get to the surface, you're barely running out of air, and then when you break the surface of the water, what do? Right? Which lifts up the front of your rib cage. Pec minor did that for you. It's like gasping for air, where we have to raise the front of our rib cage. That's pec minor, all day long, twice on Sundays. But its primary job is to make subtle motions of our scapula, so that we can protect the back of our rib cage. The third muscle that we have here is another muscle that everybody should have heard of. Typically they use the shoulder or the arm model to ask this one. And this is our deltoid muscle. And we see the deltoid muscle here. And then we can see the deltoid muscle from behind here. So this is a large cuff-like muscle. So this is ultimately a left shoulder or a left arm. You can see the deltoid muscle in the front, off to the side, and also in the back. So this muscle is number 10 on your arm model. So this big, nice cuff muscle here in my hand. And how do you exercise your deltoids in the gym? There's three exercises you should do. Three exercises you should do to strengthen your deltoids?
Lateral.
Lateral raise, but you can't say lateral raise. What's that motion? I start here, I end here. Abduction. I've abducted my arm, so the abduction of the shoulder is definitely its primary job. What else do you do in the gym to strengthen your deltoids? Overhead press isn't so much a deltoid as it is a levator scapula exercise. It's a good guess though, it does work it a little bit.
The rear deltoid raise.
Where you're gonna do some sort of dumbbell raise, whether you're doing it like this or you're coming like so, but what's this motion? If I start here and I end here. That's flexion, shoulder flexion. So this definitely flexes our shoulder. And then the last one is you want to do something behind you. Extension and hyperextension of the shoulder. Deltoid does all three of those. It flexes the shoulder, it extends and hyperextends the shoulder, and it abducts the shoulder. And don't get me wrong, you're talking about different exercises which not only work the deltoid like a dumbbell, like a kettlebell raise where they come up like so, you're working deltoid in part, but you're working other muscles too, biceps, triceps.
Yes.
So those kettlebell exercises are good because they work multiple muscles at the same time. But if you just wanted to work pure deltoid, all day long, all day long, all day long. Everybody with me on the delt? So it has three different motions due to the fact that it has fibers in the front, fibers on the side, and fibers in the back. If they ask you what's the deltoid's action, give me one. Just give me one. Okay? Abduct the shoulder, your money. So with regards to pec major, pec minor, and the deltoid, do we have any questions? The last one, and then I'm going to let you label a little bit, and then we'll go and get some more muscles before we call it a day. The next one are our muscles of respiration. This is a fancy way of saying what? These are muscles that cause us to breathe. And there's two. One of them is the diaphragm. And the only way you're going to see the diaphragm is if you've got torso down. And the other one is something called the intercostal. What does inter mean? If I say something is inter, what is it? It's between. And costals, what's costal? Between the ribs. These are muscles between the ribs. Intercostal is between ribs. The diaphragm is a beautiful muscle. They ask it almost every exam. And they ask it in a number of different ways. Last semester they used the picture. Some semesters they use torso guy. Either way, it's a beautiful picture. It should be an easy 2 points for you. But when you look at the diaphragm, what we're looking at here is the torso. We're looking at the diaphragm rather from below. So we can see the spine coming down into the low back. This spade-shaped muscle is our diaphragm, which separates what two cavities from one another? Thoracic and abdominal. In the center, we're going to see this rainbow of white. This is known as the central tendon. But this muscle is the diaphragm. And we can see the diaphragm on torso guy. The diaphragm on torso guy, I don't believe it has a number. But it's this muscle right here. You can also see this muscle on the opposite side as well. It's the muscle that's separating thoracic from the lumbar, abdominal cavities. This muscle is a muscle of respiration, which means what's its action? When this muscle contracts, what activity takes place? We breathe. This muscle makes us breathe. It literally forces us to breathe. And we'll learn more about how that happens when we get to the respiratory system. But this muscle, if they ask you what's this muscle's action, breathing, respiration, inhalation, exhalation, any of those work. We breathe because of this muscle. Make sure you label diaphragm because, they do ask it frequently. The other muscle of respiration, here's another look at the same diaphragm. The other muscle of respiration is called our intercostal muscles. Intercostal again means between the ribs, so these are muscles that literally exist in between our ribs. You see rib muscles here. Everybody here likes to eat spare ribs? That means you love intercostal muscles. That's really what that means. Because that's what you're eating when you eat spare ribs. Is you're eating the ribs that exist between that animal's, pig, cow, what have you, ribs. And they're delicious, especially with a little barbecue sauce. And we have two layers of intercostal muscles. We have the outer layer and the inner layer. These are the ones that are closer to the lungs. These are the ones that are closer to the skin. The ones closer to the skin are called our external intercostal muscles. You are responsible for this one. You are not responsible for this one. I don't know why, but you're not. So if they point to a picture of a muscle that exists between ribs, it has to be the external intercostal muscle. And when these muscles contract, our rib cage goes like this. It comes outward. And as such, it forces us to breathe. So this muscle, along with the diaphragm, are the two muscles that force us to inhale. When these muscles relax, we are forced to exhale.
So what is